Alright, so we're going to change the intake manifold on this 2003 Mercury Mountaineer. It's got the 4.6 V8 in it. I haven't done any diagnostics on it. He just contacted me and wanted the intake changed, and I didn't ask him why or anything like that. My guess is these intakes are plastic and they leak coolant, so that's what my guess is why he wants it changed. I did notice that check engine light's on, and it didn't want to start right away, and I also noticed that the mass air flow sensor is disconnected here. So like I said, I don't know the full story behind this truck. I'm just asked to change the intake manifold, so that's what I'm going to do. First thing I'll do is just remove this box and this ductwork and stuff, and then we'll pull that throttle body off. And the only thing about throttle body on these is the EGR is hardwired. It's got a hard line going over to the exhaust manifold. It's kind of an ignorant design a little bit, so a lot of times you can just kind of move it out of the way on these and not have to disconnect it from over here, which I'm hoping is the case, because I'm sure it's rusted over here and almost impossible to get off. So normally you can kind of just, there's enough room in there where you can kind of move them out of the way. So I'm just going to jump right in on it. Pull this box off. You got two clips here, just a regular worm clamp there, and a couple hoses and stuff, and we'll pull this box out of the way. And like I said, I'll probably move the throttle body, and then we'll knock the coils out and the alternator and just kind of go from there. But first thing I'll do is take this box out. I'm going to go get set up, get some tools, and then we'll start knocking. Alright, so that comes out pretty easy. Just unclip the two clips here on the bottom, and then you got the regular worm clamp there, a couple hoses right here. They just pull straight out, so you can take that out, get it out of the way. It'll kind of open up your engine bay a little bit. Like I said, the next step for me normally is I get the throttle body off, and normally I don't take it completely, everything completely off it. I just get it loose and off, and then kind of set it off to the side. We're going to have to remove this EGR. I believe those are two 13 mil. Memory certain now. They're smaller, so it might be 10 mil. So let's get that loose and see where we're at with that, and go from there. Alright, so we got two 10 mil in this EGR. Go ahead and get that loose. Now there is a gasket, you don't want to lose that. And then that's loose now. We should be able to finagle that manifold out without taking this completely off, I hope. Like I said already. The problem with a car this old is everything's kind of stuck there in various places. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the throttle body off. And you have to go around and take off the various connectors that are hooked to it, and get it loose. It looks like it's 8 mil that holds it, and we'll take it loose. I'm going to leave I'll probably end up leaving the throttle cable and all that stuff on it, and just kind of setting it up here. Hopefully, that's what I've done in the past with these, without totally taking them apart. So we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and get it set up, and we'll start taking it apart. And hopefully we can just kind of set it off to the side. Alright, so I went ahead and got the throttle body off, and I just put it up. I put a towel on the cowl and just kind of put it up there. I leave all the cables connected. It doesn't save you a whole lot of time, but it does save you a little bit of time instead of taking it completely off the truck. And I just got a bungee cord going across, kind of holding it. When you take that off, there's 5 8mm bolts and various hoses and connectors and stuff. So just go through it all, take your time, and take everything loose. Now we're at the point where there's a couple different options. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the upper radiator hose off and the alternator. So you will have to drain your coolant on this anyway because you have coolant going through your manifold. So go ahead and drain your coolant and take this upper radiator hose off, and then that'll give us access to the alternator. Before we do that, of course, we'll disconnect the battery, the negative on it, and so we don't short anything out. And then we'll pull this alternator completely out of there, and then we'll start going for some of the electrical stuff, and we'll pull all the coils out of it, disconnect the fuel injectors, you know, the electrical to it, and we'll be pretty much getting near the point to start taking the bolts out. So let's take the next thing I'll do is take this upper radiator hose off and start taking the stuff off for the alternator. Alright, so I got the upper radiator hose off. We're going to take this alternator bracket off on the top. Should be 4 10mm bolts. Probably could use my impact, my 3/8 impact, be a little quicker. So this bracket should slide out, and that'll give you close access to this alternator. Let's see, I didn't take the battery loose yet, so I'll go ahead and do that before I get too far ahead of myself. Of course, that's 8mm instead of 10. Always disconnect your battery when you're messing with your alternator. So we're going to take the connectors off on the alternator, and then after that I will probably pull the serpentine belt. He wants it changed anyway, so now would be a good time to go ahead and change it or take it off. So I'll go ahead and pull that belt off, and I'll disconnect. We got a 10mm here, it looks like, in this connector, and then we'll just kind of move this wiring off to the side. And I believe there's two, it looks like two bolts to hold the bottom of the alternator in right here. We'll get to that, and then I'll pick you back up, and I'll kind of show you once I get it out. It's kind of hard to show you. It's a little bit tight in there, so I'll pull it off, and then alright, so I got the alternator off. On these Mercuries and stuff, the tensioner for the belt is super close to the fan. So this is what I use. This is actually a belt removal tool. It's an old one. And it has different attachments on it. This is 3/8, but the actual, on the Mercury here, it's a 1/2 inch square hole, so you need the 1/2 inch adapter. I still have that bar down in the tensioner. I'm just going to leave it on there because it was kind of a pain to get it on. That helps a lot if you got one of those tools. Take this particular belt off. This belt's in pretty bad shape. Anyway, once you get those 4 bolts off, on the top of the alternator, you have 2 10mm down here. Now they don't have to come all the way out. They can stay in the water pump down there. Just loosen them out. And the reason they don't have to come all the way out is because this is slotted. So you just loosen them and then pull the alternator straight up and out. So now that that's out, we're basically going to be looking at just going through. I think my next step is going to be just taking all the coil packs out. Those should be, I think, 7mm. There's 4 on each side. Obviously, it's a V8. And then we'll disconnect. While I'm doing that, I'll disconnect each fuel injector and that'll move that wiring out of the way, and then we'll take the fuel line off and go from there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start on removing all these coil packs and getting them out of the way. So it's just, this job isn't super hard. It's just a matter of getting all this crap off of here and clearing the way for the manifold to come out. It's you would think stuffing a 4.6 in here would be kind of a challenge. These aren't super big SUVs, but it actually fits in there. Actually fits in there pretty good, and there's actually a decent amount of room to work on it. So that's that. So I'm going to go ahead and, I'm not going to bore you with taking all this stuff off. Just get yourself a 7mm socket and just take all your coil packs off, disconnect them from the electrical, and while you're doing it, the fuel injector is right there. Disconnect that, and then I'll pick it back up after I get done pulling all those coils out and disconnecting the electrical and everything. Alright, I got all the coil packs off, and I kind of set them off to the side or they come out. It's not necessarily critical for them to go back in the same hole, but this is what you're dealing with. This car was kind of scary because all the wiring stuff seems pretty brittle on it. But one of these, the boot came off inside the cylinder, so you got to fish that out. Try to twist these a little bit, and they should come out all in one piece. If they don't, the boot does come off. There's a spring in there, and there's a little ledge right here that lines up with the actual coil, and that's kind of where you line the boot back up if it does fall off. Hopefully yours doesn't. Normally they don't, but this one's got a lot of oil and antifreeze and stuff down in the holes, and some of them are pretty old. So anyway, I was dealing with that. So anyway, once you get all that off, go ahead and pull this hose off, and then you have your fuel line. And I just use one of these quick release fuel line tools. I've had this for like 25 years. Bought off a tool truck a long time ago, and I mean, it's funny, I still use this all the time. I have fancier ones now, and they sell fancier ones, but even these little plastic ones work good. So you're just going to find the right size and put it over the line, and then push in on it, and it pushes the spring in on that fuel line, and that'll release it. And then I think all we have left is whatever's holding it in the back. They hung a bunch of wires and stuff in the back on the manifold, so you got to get that loose. Good chance that some of that stuff will break back there, the little holders and stuff. I don't know. I haven't tried taking this one off yet, but that's been in my experience. And if it happens, it happens. You know, you're talking 18-year-old vehicles, and the plastic gets brittle. So don't beat yourself up too bad if it breaks. It's not a big deal. You can put a zip tie back or whatever you have to do. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take this heater hose off right here and look and see what I can get off in the back, and then we'll start pulling the bolts off for the manifold, start getting this thing out of here. Alright, I got those back wires loose. I actually used a cat claw upholstery tool, and they both came out without breaking, so that was nice. Looks like there's two back there. So now we're going to go, I believe everything's disconnected. I could be wrong. Sometimes you miss things, but I'm going to go ahead and start pulling these bolts out, and we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Yeah, there's just various bolts in there. Looks like they're all 10 mil. So just go down the line, pull them out, and then we'll try to lift this thing out. Hopefully this EGR doesn't give us too much trouble, because I really don't want to mess with that. I think it'll, if I try to take it off from the exhaust manifold, I think it'll break. Being on here this long and just my experience dealing with it. So I'm going to go ahead and take all the bolts out. I'm going to go ahead and pull all the bolts out, and then we're going to hope for the best with that EGR tube. We'll find out together if you can get it out. I've done it before. This one doesn't have as much play as I've had in the past with other ones. But anyway, we'll give it a shot and see. Alright, so the manifold slid right out. You do have this thing, it's kind of like a heat shield thing you can put on the new one, put back on the new one. Now the old factory manifold sets had these long gaskets like this, and the new ones are redesigned. You can kind of see this one's blown right there, right here on the corner. And so anyway, we'll go ahead and clean out this valley, vacuum it out, and you know, it'll probably be a good idea to change the oil in this when you do this, because you will get, no matter how much you drain the coolant, you're going to get some down in the engine a little bit. And then here's the manifold itself. And like I said, I don't know. He said it was cracked. It's very possible it is. These crack all the time. But I went ahead and pulled it out with the fuel rail and everything connected to it. And we'll go ahead and switch all that over when we get the new one. So it's not too bad. You know, it's just a lot of connectors and connections and stuff like that. But once you get it, once you get into it, it's not as bad as it looks. So anyway, I'm going to go get the new part, and we'll clean this up real good, and then we'll start putting. Alright, so I got the two manifolds out, laid out here. I already took the fuel injectors and fuel rail off of the old manifold. You just had the four 8mm bolts. They come out, and they look like this, kind of studs. And then just gently pull your injectors out. Now this manifold's got a lot of gunk and grease and all kinds of debris on it. So when you pull your injectors out, try to keep those away from all that. And this is what your fuel rail looks like. And I really suggest replacing your O-rings if possible. I'm pretty sure I have these here at the shop. So I'm going to go ahead and probably replace these. Either way, if you do replace them or don't replace them, I would put some Vaseline around the O-rings themselves and give it a little bit of lubrication before putting it in the new manifold. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can find these O-rings and kind of clean this up, all the gook off. You want to try to keep the debris away from the bottom of the fuel injectors. Like I said, this one's got a lot of grease and gook and stuff on it, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and work on that, and then we'll put some Vaseline on this and reinstall those on the new manifold, and then transfer over anything else I need to transfer over, and then I still need to clean the block, and I'm going to vacuum out the inside of the block there with wet dry vac and clean up all the surfaces. Now these do have a new design for the gaskets. Each individual port's got its own gasket. It's already pre-installed on this manifold, so you don't have to worry about doing anything with that. Just make sure that you clean up the surface and the block real good, and that should be. You don't need any other additional gaskets to it. And this manifold actually came with a lot of stuff with it. It came with a new thermostat and a housing and everything, so it's not a bad manifold kit. A little bit pricey, about $300, but it does come. It looks like it comes. It even came with a new alternator bracket, believe it or not. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and clean up these injectors and install on the new one, and then we'll clean that block off and start. All right, so you're going to want to clean up your heads as good as possible, like that. Especially like this has got, you know, some miles on it, so the valve covers will leak a little bit, seep out on the edges. So I try to get all that gunk out before I even try to clean up the head. And then you will get, no matter how much you drain the coolant, you'll probably still get some coolant down in the cylinder, the top of the head where the intake's at, and maybe in your spark plug hole. So I use a little wet dry vac, and this attachment here actually can get down inside. I can put that all the way down in this hole and suck out anything that fell down in there, coolant or gasket material or anything else. And then I use a you know, just a regular air nozzle and blow out the spark plug holes real good. So once you get it all cleaned up and everything's clean, and I vacuum out the gully here, the valley and all that stuff, and Just make sure it's clean and sanitary, and then you're ready to pop the new manifold in. And like I said before, the new manifold already has gaskets installed on it, so there's no need to put other gaskets on here. Just set the manifold on there, and then it's ready. Alright, once you get the new intake set in there, go ahead and start all the bolts and just get them started and down flush with the manifold, but don't tighten them at all. And then here, the instructions were kind enough to give us the torque sequence and the torque. So the first pass is stage 1 is 18 inch-pounds, and the second pass is 18 foot-pounds. So it's 18 inch-pounds on the first, 18 foot on the second, and here's the torque pattern. I'll go ahead and take a picture of that and put it up on the screen for a little bit, so you can copy it or screenshot or whatever you want to do with it. So 18 inch-pounds stage 1, and you'll tighten it in that torque pattern. Then 18 foot-pounds stage 2, tighten it in that torque pattern. And like I said, I'll take a picture of this and post it, put it in here, and then you can just alright, once you get it torqued down to spec and you follow the procedure, next thing you want to do, or what I do, is start plugging in all the coil packs. Now the new manifold came with new self-tapping screws, and you just want to put those down until they're basically snug against the coil. You don't want to over tighten them. The manifold instructions repeat that several times. Don't over tighten those bolts. I guess they'll strip out pretty quickly. So just run these down until they're barely up against the coil, just a little snug, and then that's all you need. And then it's pretty much just plugging in everything you unplugged, all your connectors, hoses and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll put the alternator and the hoses back on the front, and then start worrying about the throttle body. Alright, I went ahead and put the alternator on. Now's a good time to put a new serpentine belt on. If yours is old or wore out, makes it a little easier with the alternator out of the way to route that out. And Ford did put the mounting here. This is a 4.0, this is the 4.6. If yours doesn't have that, you can go on Google Images, search, and just put in your car and the engine, and it'll pop up pretty quick. So yeah, I got all the injectors and coil packs installed. I have the alternator on, new belt on. So now it's just a matter of just kind of going around and plugging in things that were unplugged. And then my parts did come in, so I'm going to go run and get those real quick. And we'll put that EGR back on and throttle body and all that good stuff, and hopefully get this thing out of here. So it's almost, you're on the home stretch. If you've gotten this far, you're around the home stretch. If it's your own car, all you'd have left is, and your EGR is fine, then all you'd have left is just some various hoses, put your throttle body back on, fill it up with coolant, and you should be good to go. So I'm going to hook a few more things up and get to the final stages, and then we'll kind of close it. And here's the top of it all back together. One thing I would recommend is changing the oil on it. If you got a cracked intake or any kind of intake issue, you could be leaking coolant into your oil. And I changed the oil on this one, and I actually did have a little bit of coolant come out first before the oil. Not a lot, but probably a quarter cup or so. So I mean, it was enough to contaminate the oil. So anytime you change the intake, I'd recommend changing the oil with it. And you know, this job is just a lot of taking connectors off and hoses and stuff, throttle body, alternator, stuff like that. Hopefully you don't have the same problem I had with the EGR. I've done a bunch of these, never had that problem with the EGR before where it just snapped like that. But like I said, these cars are getting older. You know, 17, 18 years old, stuff starts to get brittle and things start going wrong, especially with exhaust and getting rusty and all that good stuff. So hopefully you don't have those same issues. It's a pretty straightforward, simple job if you remember where everything goes. It's just, you know, this one kind of got derailed because of that EGR tube, and then it broke off. But whatever, it's done now. We're gonna put the wheel well back in, get the wheel back on it. I've already filled it up with oil, fill it up with coolant, and then kick it out of here. So we'll be on to the next one. So anyway, just video might have got off track a little bit just because of a couple of days went by and happened to mess with that exhaust manifold. But hopefully you get the gist of the job and get something out of the video. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one, and God bless.